how's it hanging? How's it happen? You guys know this is Kevin from the Chord Progression Podcast, sponsored by Dark Fusion Systems, the best for your custom computer needs, whether you custom computer for gaming, streaming, creative, music, business, personal, whatever it is. They will build the proper PC for you. You get $100 off your entire build. Use code CPPod at darkfusionsystems.com. Link to the podcast below. Thank you guys. Also be sure to hit subscribe to the podcast as well. Big help. Before we go to our feature presentation, if you hear my voice kind of like going during this episode, I've got mad vocal strain right now, so my voice is kind of shot. Please bear with me. Thank you. Now it's time for feature presentation. We have Ryan from the band Sound&Shape on the podcast. We go into the brand new record, Pillars of Creation, which came out on May 24th, but we really get a deep dive into the influences of this record, how Ryan's influences really took hold on this, not only from what is on the surface, but what those influences are influenced by, really going deep into it, and how rock and metal's genre blending and how you can no longer see the stitches of these influences in the music can possibly break through, create a world where genres really don't exist anymore, and where people can come together so much and not have separation based off of music and culture. You guys ready for a great one? Let's go! Yeah. Well, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, listeners of the Chord Progression Podcast, we're going to go a little bit away from the heaviness we've been bringing you a lot recently to go into something maybe a little bit different. If you're fans of a band like Biffy Clyro, Perfect Circle, Coheed and Cambria, we may have just found something for you. The recently released album, Pillars of Creation, came out on May 24th, and today we're going to be talking with this man all about it. So please welcome Ryan from Sound&Shape to the podcast. So Ryan, welcome to the Chord Progression Podcast.
How's it going, man?
It is, it's going, man. How's it going on your end?
Good, man. Just busy, busy, tired, but good busy, so.
Yeah, it's got to be good busy, especially brand new record out, people getting into it, people getting a chance to really take a part of it. So now that, of course, we're recording this a couple of days after the release of the record, what has been the reaction of the record so far, not only from fans that you know and love, but also new people seeing the band for the first time?
It's actually been overall extremely positive, and I feel that now I've jinxed myself, so I'm going to knock on wood. But thank you. It's funny, all the reviews so far have been from heavy publications like Metal Injection and stuff like that. And it's all been overwhelmingly positive. So I'm like, just sort of like poised and waiting for the bad ones to roll in. But it's been great. We've been sitting on it for a little bit, and it was to the point where I was like, I can't listen anymore because one day I think it's the greatest album ever made, and then the next day I'm like, delete it, it's all crap, we're not putting it out. So but yeah, I'm super happy with how it's going so far.
That sounds like just like the plight of any artist, though, because you could think it's the greatest thing in the world, but then the next day you wake up with a different mindset, a different overall mood, and it completely changes how you're seeing your own music at the same time. But it's still great to hear that, you're seeing the positive reaction, but specifically from heavier outlets as well, which is something I'm kind of surprised at, just given the fact that I constantly am seeing heavier outlets a little bit go more towards some of the crazier stuff right now. But at the same time, they are getting a little bit more into some of these more alternative styles, some more of the progressive styles, as well as we've seen with how big bands like Bad Omens and Sleep Token have been getting recently. So it does make sense to see him expand a little bit more, try something different, and really get a taste of your record and see, okay, what do we think about this? What's the overall perception of it? And let's get more people to know about it.
Right. And, I think I don't want to try to put too, fine of a point on it, because I really don't know, and it would take hours to try to parse, why. Because, I like heavy music, but, I grew up, my favorite band of all time is the Beatles. So that's always going to be there. Like, they permeate everything I do. So I think that there's a universality in our music, and especially this record, that as we've sort of gathered other influences, and this is definitely our heaviest record by far, even though I wouldn't go so far as to call it, it's not a metal record by any stretch. Although the first song is in drop A flat, I will say that. but I think maybe it has something to do with that. Like we've sort of honed some more influences that are a little bit more niche, while also being able to kind of get those universal elements a little bit more, integrated a little bit better, I guess is the best way to put it.
Interesting. I can kind of see where you're coming from with that universality, especially being as big of a Beatles fan as you are, because you think about any kind of music that really has come across over the past 60 years, there's always some sort of relation that can be brought back to some kind of instrumentation, some kind of songwriting, some kind of lyricism that the Beatles put together. Because, I mean, there's such a stark difference in music between before the Beatles became popular and everything since then. It's such this vast array of differentiation. But because of that, anything after that has a little bit of that Beatles feel to it is gonna have this connection point across many different genres because we all understand it as fans.
Right. And there's sort of two things to the Beatles influence. There's the direct Beatles influence of this kind of sounds Beatley.
Mm-hmm.
And then which, of course I do in my writing, of course, because you just can't help it. I mean, those songs are in my DNA. And then there's the Beatles influence of the willingness to push things, the desire to experiment, the desire to push things, and the fearlessness to try to do things that you don't necessarily feel comfortable with at first, which is a lot of what we did try to do with this record. Some of the demos for this album, there's a couple longer songs on this record. Actually, there's about half. I think the first song on the record, Look For Me, or the first proper song on the record, Look For Me in the Sky, the demo for that song is 8.5 minutes long. And so we wanted to push and push and push in all these different directions. And, part of pushing in different directions also means pulling back. So, some of the songs are short, they're shorter than they were on the last record. Because I do love pop music, and pop music in the sense of, the Beatles, the Kinks, the Who, that kind of stuff. So it's an outlook, being a Beatles fan and taking that direction, as much as it is like a stylistic sort of path to go down. And I think if you look at like sort of my favorite bands, there's sort of a through line of always wanting to push things, from where they are on one record to where they are in the next, always kind of expands. And that's sort of always been the MO, especially with this lineup of the bands. Like, the last record we did a thing, and we were really proud of it, and we loved it, and it did better than any of our records previously. So when it came time to do this one, we said, okay, great, we don't want to do that again, so let's do more of everything that was on that one.
But isn't that the whole entire idea behind, creating music and creating something new? If you keep creating the same thing over and over again and rehashing that idea and keep putting it out there, but just packaging it differently, as fans, we're going to listen to it. It's like, yeah, if we really like that record, like if we really like Disaster Medicine, we're going to enjoy it if you kind of do something that's very similar and repeat it. But there's going to be no further growth potentially on your end, especially as an artist, as a creative. You want to expand, you want to try different things. And as time goes on, those influences that you have, they might become stronger. There might be new ones that come in there as well. And the ideas that end up wrapping around that idea, what's in your mind, can really create something different that you want to go out and try. Yes, you build something great, with your previous record, but how can you expand that? Where can you grow your overall sound? How can you make this so much better so that when people listen to it, they're just like, I never knew you guys could potentially do something like that. Right. I never knew that was possible. Holy crap. Can we get more of this?
Yeah, exactly. That's sort of the goal, there are certain points in this new record where, like, now that we've been sort of playing the new stuff out, where I like to look at people's faces when we get to those parts, just to kind of judge. And it hasn't failed me yet. Like, they've been getting the reactions I've hoped for. So I'm like, and not that I ever write songs with that in mind, or we arrange things like that. But in the rehearsal room, when we get it all together with the band and stuff, when we get the songs done, and I'm like, okay, that part is going to kill live. Like there's a big riff and Look for Me in the Sky, and there's certain other parts where I'm like, okay, live in the show, that's going to be a big spot. And it hasn't failed yet. I think we're, I guess, 5 shows into touring now behind the new record. And like, yeah, every night without fail, the parts where I suspected were going to impact have been 100%. So very happy with that. And kind of shows that, like sometimes you really do need to just like trust your instincts. Even a tiny band like us who has no measurable success really, sometimes the instincts are right.
Yeah, if you don't trust your instincts, then kind of what's the point? And at that point, the original sound that you have within yourselves is not going to come out. You're going to end up creating something that's going to be just crafted based on what's popular, what's hitting right now, but it's going to feel soulless. It's not going to feel like there's any substance behind it. It's going to essentially feel like artificial intelligence wrote it. And that's not what you're going for. You want to create something that has so much substance behind it that is truly you. And when you're making those moments where you're like, you know what, in the live setting, this is going to hit. This riff is going to get people to stand back and say, whoa.
Yeah.
I was not expecting that, because there are a couple times on this album where I was just waiting for a moment where that like riff was going to take over, this different type of sound was going to take over, or what you were building to was going to finally come into fruition. And when it finally did, I'm just sitting there going, yeah, that happened. And I was happy about it.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's the thing. Like, music should sort of grab you and take you on a journey. And as cliche as that is, but and different music does it in different ways. And sometimes that that music doesn't connect with you, and that's fine. Like, not a lot of music doesn't connect with me, and that's okay. Like. It's kind of a joke within the band that like I don't like anything, which is not true. I mean, I love a lot of music, and I love a lot of music deeply. But like we'll be out on the road or something and play with a local, or I don't know. Maybe I shouldn't go down that road, but the guys will play a band or something, and I'm just like, yeah, that's fine. It just doesn't take me, But yeah, and I think there's a point that a lot of modern bands reach within maybe the last 10 years where actually probably longer than that, where they don't like, they're only being influenced by the bands that they heard that made them pick up an instrument in terms of like what's been popular the last couple of years. So they're not seeing what influenced those bands, and they're not going back to what influenced the bands that influenced the bands that influenced the bands. So all they're getting is the watered down version. So they're not able to really create much, because they're already getting the what's the word I'm looking for, the most transparent version of whatever it is they think they want to do. So they really have no place to go. And like with me, I've always been interested in like trying to find the foundations of whatever it is that I'm loving at the moment. So yeah, I'm a huge Beatles. That led me to go back and find Chuck Berry and Little Richard. I'm a huge Little Richard fan, and Ray Charles and Sam Cooke. Like, Sam Cooke's one of my favorite singers in the world. And you gotta like, and then you can go even farther back than all that, like the Ink Spots and all that kind of stuff. And I think a lot of that has been, I mean, you could listen to our record 1,000 times and you'd never think, oh yeah, he's a Sam Cooke fan, but all that stuff is so foundational. And if you don't learn about all that, then you're drawing from such a small well that, you're eventually going to, dry the well up, and you're just going to rehash the same things over and over again. And that's like my biggest fear. It's like, if we're doing a part that I think sounds too much like something else, just like, hold on, give me 10 minutes, everybody out of the room. Let me figure this out. So
I think you're kind of onto something here, because if you look at rock and metal specifically from before, I'll say before the pandemic hit, there was such a consistent sound within it, and it was so over the top, kind of generic, to where everything sounded the same. And it seemed like every band, either they wanted to hit on exactly what was being popular, so they're influenced by what was on the surface level, or they just went with, what was being influenced prior to that. They never went back further and really realized, okay, like, what influenced these bands that came out, in the 2010s. Okay, there's bands that listen to the 2000s. Now let's go to them. Let's go to the 90s, 80s. Let's see what we can deconstruct to really create this overall sound. And it really kind of encapsulated this era where so many people said rock was dead, which, of course, you look at what happened the past 5 years. It's completely not the case anymore. It's definitely alive and well. But what we're seeing now is two different aspects of it. We're seeing, we're seeing people like you who really dive deeper into not only what you like in your roots, but go further to what the roots of those were, deconstruct exactly what made those great, the piece of those, and what can you bring into your records. What I'm seeing now from some of the other bands too that are newer is, especially the ones that are popping off, is they're not just taking influences from what's on the surface around them, but they're not necessarily going deeper in the history, but going deeper into a wider array of, what's being popular in pop music, what's popular in hardcore, what's popular in metalcore, what's popular in hard rock, what's popular in country, and how can we take these styles and blend them all together? So it's two different styles and two different ideas, but both ideas and both concepts really work. It all depends upon, as a creative, what you like and what you want to do.
Right, exactly. And, it's current now and putting together is going to lead to some iffy stuff. But like you take, like, Rush is one of my favorite bands. Obviously.
Mm-hmm.
And they took Genesis and Yes, who also some of my favorite bands, and mixed it with sort of the Zeppelin stuff and the late 60s sort of bluesier stuff, and it became this weird amalgamation, and they put it through their filter and it became Rush. And Rush is a singular band. And I don't think we're to be an elemental band, which is it's an alchemical thing where it's like you're a bass element band. The Beatles are the Beatles. There's lots of things that went into make them, but at the end of the day, they're one thing. I feel like the Kinks are the same way. Rush is definitely the same way. Yes is the same way. I feel like Alice in Chains is the same way. Smashing Pumpkins are the same way. And like the Pumpkins are a huge influence of mine and all of ours, actually. And it's where you take all the influences and put them together, but where you don't see the stitches anymore, I guess, is to make a clumsy metaphor, where it's just this amalgam of one thing. And one thing I never got, even back into my high school days, people would be like, hey, let's start a metal band. I'm like, well, why would you do that? Or let's start a punk band. It's like, well, why don't you just, 3, 4, 5 people, why don't you get your instruments, get in a room, maybe one guy has a couple songs, and you play them together and you work them up, you see what happens, and then go from there. It doesn't have to be a metal band, it doesn't have to be a punk band, it doesn't have to be whatever, just do it. Which is why I've always sort of bucked the prog rock tag for us, because I feel like that any sort of descriptor aside from rock sort of puts you in a little box. But I've had to accept it. Especially, I guess this record we leaned into the prog thing a little bit more. But only in so much as some of the songs are longer. But yeah, like I understand genres and why they have to be there, but I've never been interested in them, I guess, is what I'm trying to say. And I think that, what you were saying about, some newer artists sort of pulling from pop and pulling from metal and hard rock and everything. Hopefully that's sort of the genesis, no pun intended, of sort of the genre barriers sort of just getting blurred and eventually going away, and it's just going to be music. And things can be marketed differently at that point.
That's going to be interesting to see if it actually happens, mostly because the reason why I think a lot of us use genres and use those labels is because it just gives us something easy to describe what we like and to classify this stuff. As humans, we really, really, really want to actually have that set record of, alrighty, this is what I like, this is what it's classified as. And if I'm trying to find something similar, I want to stick within that realm. And of course, when it comes to rock and metal, you see so many other subgenres off of that because there's so many different ideas that are coming through, so many different things that are playing in. And as bands continue to blend genres, it's going to become harder, but that could possibly lead to new classifications of things just because that's what people want. However, as bands and artists continue to blend so many different ideas together, so many different genres together, all that's going to continue to happen is those barriers are going to be broken and people can jump from one style to another and not have that gatekeep mentality feel. It's like, oh, I'm a pop music fan. There's no way I can like metal. But we just also saw Knock Loose last year play Coachella to a huge crowd. So this is going to happen. And on this record, you guys lean a little bit more to the prog rock kind of stuff, not just on length, but I thought some of the transitions from different parts of the songs definitely had that prog rock feel. But it wasn't just straight that. Like, there's more ideas that you had come through here that you really built the beginning of the songs off of and then led to a whole nother idea for those as you continued on. Like, we saw where the start was, and then we got a different build into what eventually it was going to become.
Yeah, definitely. And I think I just like there's a sense of dramatics in our music, which I think is associated with progressive music, you know. And that's not, and I mean, I love prog rock, you know, like I'm a huge King Crimson fan. Like Robert Fripp is my favorite guitar player of all time. So, you know, it's, you know, in the studio when we're recording, I'm like, okay, this solo, do I want to, you know, put on my Fripp hat, or do I want to put on my Alex Lifeson hat, or, you know, do I want to do the Gilmore thing, or, you know, whatever. I mean, ultimately it's me because I can't play like any of them, but and you know, I remember, and I think, you know, I haven't been in high school in a very, very long time, but, you know, back then music was very closely tied to your identity. And when I moved to Nashville, it was, you know, there was like the metalheads and like the punk rockers. And I somehow fell in with the punk rockers, even though I had no clue about punk rock when I moved here. I had no idea. They used to make fun of me for playing guitar solos. Like, they were like, you're too good of a guitar player to like hang out with us. And I'm like, what do you mean? Like, I, you know, because my dad was a singer in bands when I was growing up, and, you know, so I was around just rock music, and, you know, the guys he hung out with were all shredders. So I thought that was what guitar playing was. And I don't consider myself a shredder at all, but you know, guitar solos were just a normal thing. So I didn't realize part of the punk thing was like, oh, guitar solos aren't cool. So I grew up being like, I want to play guitar solos. So when I started jamming with friends when I moved, you know, to Nashville as a teen, they were like, what are you doing? And I'm like, what do you mean what I'm doing? I'm just jamming over you know, the 3 bar chords you're playing. And they're like, well, you're not supposed to do that. And I was like, what do you mean I'm not supposed to? We're jamming. What, we're going to sit here and play 3 bar chords for an hour? Like, no thanks. I'm going to pack up, you know, and go. So I don't know. I have an 11-year-old son, and, you know, I guess I should ask him. You know, I don't know if I guess probably at that age it's not as divided about music, but, you know, I don't know if music still divides along social lines like that anymore. Because he's, you know, he's a contrarian like me, so he is not into music as a reaction to me being so into music. So he probably doesn't know anyway. But yeah, it'll be interesting to see, like, if, as you know, if music sort of the barriers drift apart there, if sort of the social lines also, you know, that were once sort of divided upon, you know, metalheads and goths and punk rockers and, you know, whatever, sort of go away as well.
I mean, I think I was in high school a little more recently than you were.
Oh, I'm sure.
But I mean, I've been out of there for, what year is it now? I've been out of there for 11 years at this point. So anything I think is probably still, way, way, way in the past. However, back when I was there, I mean, it still had that feel of whatever music you liked. There was definitely that split that was there.
Mhm.
And it necessarily wasn't at that time because of the music. It was because of the culture around the music. So
Yeah, good point.
so if whatever the popular kids like, if it was more the pop stuff or EDM, there was the culture that was built around that. And so many people want to conform to that. So if you were part of the punk kids or the goth kids, the metalheads, you like country music, you like just orchestral stuff, doesn't matter what it is. There was definitely a certain overall culture that was surrounded around it. And it definitely created more of those visible dividing lines and cliques and sects and whatever you want to call it. But as music is continuing to blend genres, especially with rock and metal, it's going to be interesting to see what happens with kids over the next 5 to 10 years as who knows what they're going to be into. You could have the most preppy kid ever think that Knock Loose is the coolest thing in the world. And then you have a metalhead over there. It's like, wait, they want to throw down a Knock Loose show? Okay. Or you get someone that's in pop music that just decides, oh, they want to try something different, and they create a pop punk record. And all of a sudden the kids that are into that, or they get more emo, they get more goth with it. All of a sudden the kids that like this artist and the goth kids, they come together because now they're enjoying the same stuff. It's essentially, as potentially those genre blends come in, those culture blends end up being forced to come together as well. And that's going to be a lot harder, but it's a lot easier when you have that connecting point with music to share.
Yeah. I mean, there's a couple straight up rock songs in the new Billie Eilish record.
Yeah.
And yeah, I think that's a brilliant record, by the way. And yeah, I mean, the pop world is something that's just, it's crazy. The numbers, it's like the artists go from here to here like that.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden can just go away.
Mm-hmm.
And it's beyond my understanding how that even happens in the music business these days. But I think the thing about rock, and the thing that the business side of rock right now is getting better, because there's a lot of people who were in the major label game for years who have now gotten out of it and have started at smaller companies and different companies who are like, okay, we don't have to operate at this level anymore. We can operate here with artists that we really, really, really love, and we can use our expertise, and we can actually make careers out of it. So, that's how we got a deal for this record. And because we're not an easy sign at all. We're not an easy band to, no A&R person's going to be like, yeah, these guys for sure. Yeah, 100%. Yeah, these guys are the winning bet, but there are people in positions now who can, look at bands who they know have what will be, what's the word I'm looking for? Have what people need in the business to have longer careers, which is, the wherewithal to like be able to handle it. Like we've toured making zero money a night, playing to zero people, all the way up to doing all these dates with King's X where we're playing to 1,200 people a night, and we're we get fed. Like we're happy just getting when a venue feeds us, we're so thankful because we've played places where it's like we don't even get cups of water. So the fact that we're getting to play to these big crowds, and we sell merch, and we're thankful for it. Where you have these new upstart bands who get deals like this, and they're complete assholes because they've never had to, they haven't paid their dues touring. Sorry, I don't know if I'm able to.
Oh, you can swear on this. I don't care.
Okay, good. So these people at these companies now are really able to like find bands that they love, that they know can handle it, that sort of have infrastructure built around them already. Because we have had a little bit of a team for a little while now, and now we just sort of needed a couple other pieces. They finally came together for this record, and we're hoping it works, and it seems to be doing so far. And so I'm hoping that now that people who are in the major label business have sort of defected and are now in a smaller scale, who can do things that they love, then that will sort of bring all the bands like us who have been trying to stay their course but struggling up to a point where they can really do it. Because you got to think about it, all these legacy bands, they're not going to be around forever. And I'm not even going to get into the hologram touring thing, but like U2 is going to stop touring, Coldplay is going to stop touring, the Foo Fighters are going to stop touring eventually, the Chili Peppers are going to be done. Like all of these bands that are still packed in stadiums, it's great for them now, but what happens when they all go away? There's not going to be a music industry anymore. Like the pop acts are flashes in the pan, relatively speaking, unless you're a Taylor Swift or a Billie Eilish so yeah, my hope is kind of that now some of there hasn't been a middle class for rock acts in a long time, and I think now hopefully that's going to happen.
I mean, you gotta go into politics too. When you just said that comment, it's kind of an amalgamation for America. It's kind of a metaphor for that. However, I do like you said that there's finally a middle class for rock music, because when it came to the record label game for so long, and you still see it in pop music, it's the tippy top. We want the best because we can make the most money off of that. And then anything else, no. Yeah. And you're absolutely right. There are pop stars that just ascend so fast. So much money behind them, so much promotion behind them. And then a year later, they're gone.
Yeah.
But when you can manufacture something like that, especially from a pop artist where there's so much production behind them, and so much can be done just with using that artist's voice and then finding the next artist can do that. When it comes to rock and metal, that ain't the case. You've got a full band behind you. You've got so much more behind. So you have to build that up, and you have to build that up a lot slower. You're not going to get as many flashes in the pan. Yes, we saw Bad Omens massively increase in 2022. We saw Sleep Token insanely increase in 2023.
Yeah.
They did not just start with those records.
No.
They didn't start. Linkin Park didn't, they started with Hybrid Theory, but they were around for 4 years before that. Yeah. So there's the build that happens. And if there are so many record label guys that are going back to going to the smaller stuff, like I think about use Bob Becker, for example, founder of Fearless.
Oh yeah.
Ended up dropping down. Now he's got Thriller Records, and I think all but 2 Thriller Records bands have been on the podcast before, all but 2. And it's great to see them continue to grow, build up this fan base, because as those legacy acts go away, there's going to be new ones that have to take those spots. Yeah. And there are bands there that are growing right now that are going to be taking those spots. Bad Omens will, Sleep Token will, Falling in Reverse will, Bring Me the Horizon is. A Day to Remember still can. There's so many that can get to that point. And then all the bands that are in that middle class, they just raise up off of that. And then you guys get to play consistently 1,200 cap venues, 1,500 cap venues, maybe even 3,000 cap venues. It's a beautiful thing that needs to keep happening. And the more we blend genres, the more we just promote this, and the better off we get with how to help out all these bands that create careers out of it. We're just going to keep doing it. It's been happening the past couple of years. We just need to keep that machine going.
Absolutely. And I know they're sort of a divisive band among the metal crowd, but Ghost isn't going anywhere.
No, Ghost ain't going anywhere.
Mastodon, absolutely brilliant.
Not going
anywhere. I love all their records, even the recent stuff. I'm a huge Opeth fan. Even Newpeth, I might get skewered for that in the comments. Sorry, everybody, but I love Ghost Reveries is my favorite Opeth album. Let me say that, but I also love all the new stuff. And I'm probably biased because I'm buddies with Travis, but Coheed, they're not going anywhere. They're going to keep making great records, and they're getting bigger and bigger. So rock has a future. I'm not worried about that at all. And, Sound and Shape has been a band for a long, long time. And I'm the only, original member, but this lineup has been together for about 6.5 years. And I wanted to change the name when this lineup got together because I was like, this is a band, this is the band, and I felt like, new beginning, like this is a really solid lineup. We play extraordinarily well together, like. But everybody was like, "Don't do it. You've got so many years of the name recognition." And I'm like, "Yeah, but if nobody recognizes the name and it's not name recognition," they're like, "Yeah, but you got records out and yada yada yada." So, I didn't change the name, but and I think what I am proud of is that we did stay the course, whether or not that was smart. It's not, but our early records were super super prog, like almost unlistenable prog if you ask me. But some people like them. Like 7 people like him. But we sort of kept the rock thing going, and so if we're lucky enough to sort of the rising or the high tide raises all boats. I forgot what the actual saying
Rising
is,
tide
like,
raises all ships.
if we happen to, that's it. Yeah. So if the fact that sort of rock is again sort of coming up, if I don't feel bad about being one of the ships that gets raised, because we've been doing it this whole time. And, I feel I liked our last record a lot. I mean, I loved it. I still love it. It has a special place in my heart because we started recording that album March 1st, 2020. Yeah. Like we're like watching news reports, like, oh, this is getting shut down. This is getting shut down. We're like, that doesn't bode well for the tour that starts in like 4 weeks. Yeah, so we knew we were doing that record ourselves. We brought in an engineer friend to engineer the bass and drums. We did it at our practice space, which is where we did Pillage of Creation as well. And we gave ourselves 6 weeks to do it because we had a tour booked with King's X. And then everything got shut down. So it ended up taking quite a bit longer. But yeah, I love that record. I'm very proud of it. But I feel like we bettered it quite a bit by this one. So now I'm just like, all right, let's go, we all keep saying like we're out for blood on this one, like we just want to get out there and play it all the time. So
let's get out there and play it all the time. And when it comes to, staying the course, constantly playing the music you love to, especially as, rock music is continuing to grow now and rising tide raises all ships. If you're one of those ships, yeah, it's fantastic you stayed the course, because had you deviated and went for something completely different, you might not have done exactly what you want to do as artists, might not have fulfilled that creative itch. And then you'd be like, yeah, we can maybe have, a little bit more popular music, but I just don't care for it nearly as much. That's always a possibility too. And when it comes to an artist, from my perspective, at least, being in this for quite a while, I would much rather have an artist make the music they want and give us what they truly want and continue to make a career off of it than to give me one more album of exactly what I want and call it quits. Because who wants that?
Right. And my biggest inspiration with that, for better or worse, is the Pumpkins, Billy Corgan. Because I mean, you look, no 2 Pumpkin records are the same. The 2 closest would probably be Gish and Siamese Dream, but like the quality jump in literally everything from Gish to Siamese Dream is just almost immeasurable. I mean, Gish is amazing, but then Siamese Dream is just like, what the hell? Melancholy is my favorite, and then Adore is just from Melancholy to Adore is just like the biggest left turn. When he had everybody in the business being like, "What are you doing? Like, this album's not going to sell." And it sold like 5 million copies, but when your previous record sells 10 million, 5 is seen as a failure. But then they made Machina, which is another complete sort of left turn, or that's right. But, and so I've been a Pumpkins fan since I was 13, and I was like, well, they're one of my favorite bands. I love every record. And if he can do that, then that's what I'm going to do, because, I don't want any of our records to sound the same, because I would rather, like, I don't want anybody to ever come up and be like, oh, you guys are just doing the same thing over and over again. Because that, to me, like, that is when I feel there would be no point to it, Like there's no point in doing the same thing over and over again. There just isn't. Like the whole fun part of music to me is seeing what you can create, you know, and creating is, the very act of creating should be making something new.
Mm-hmm. And even from my side too, it's like, that's what I really love to do about some of these podcast episodes. I love to bring on artists that are in rock and metal that don't necessarily have music that fully hits me perfectly or aligns with my taste, just because not every music is going to, not every band is going to, not every song is going to, but it's the conversations around that music is what's so fruitful, as we get to understand different ideas, understand where you're coming from with your music as well, really get a taste of who you are as people, and just get to enjoy it even more. Because now getting to know a little bit more about you, more about your ideas, more about your influences. Like when you said Rush, putting your Alex Lifeson cap, I'm just like, I really want to see you try and do something like that, because who knows? You're not going to be exactly like Alex, but
No.
you might try something that you would think he would go for, and it might create something within you for you to deviate and then create a riff that's going to be the base of a brand new song. Yeah,
Right.
It's going to have some Rush inspiration, but you took it and ran with it in a completely different direction. That's the creativity I absolutely love to see, and I love to get behind. And I get more connected with bands that maybe their style isn't perfectly for me based off of stuff like that.
Right. Yeah. And I mean, there's Rush influence all over our stuff. And, when I was writing all the songs for this record, I was listening to a lot of 90s Rush, Opeth, and there's a band called Squeeze. I don't know if you're familiar with them.
I've heard of their name a couple of times. Haven't really listened to them though.
Yeah, they were like a late 70s UK like sort of power pop post punky band. So that was sort of what was. But I'm like I said, huge Beatles fan, and I'm a huge Elvis Costello fan, and there's always also a huge Peter Gabriel fan. So there's always sort of the core things running around my brain when I'm writing, plus whatever I'm sort of into at the moment. And I kind of believe about music, even if you are trying, at least with me, like if I'm trying to write something in a certain mood, it never actually comes out to be exactly that, because it's going to be filtered through my like melodic sensibility, which is a combination of all the things that I love plus whatever's innate in me. Because I think that you're sort of born with musical ability or you're not. So somewhere in here is some sort of melodic sense, and it's different from my dad or my son or one of my relatives who used to play. Like if that's kind of why I think like you can listen to different guitar players play the exact same thing and it's going to sound different. It might be the same exact notes, but the feel is going to be different and it's just going to sound different. So yeah, I mean, even to me, there are definitely songs that where the Rush or the Alex Lifeson thing will come through a little bit more. I don't think other people could pick it out, And I'm a huge Noel Gallagher fan, and the biggest thing I got from him is all those Oasis songs have these huge choruses, and that's all over our record. Like every chorus is huge, or at least I try to get that way. And if a lot of people are really surprised when I say that Noel is such a big influence after they listen to any of our records, because they're like, I never would have picked that out. I'm like, good, like that's what I want. I want people to be able to listen and not go, oh, he got that from that, and he got that from that, and he got that from that. Because we've definitely played with bands out on the road where they'll play one song and I'm like, oh, that's their Stones song. And then they'll play another song like, oh, that's their Zeppelin song. And then the next one is like, oh, that's their White Stripes song, or and that's like artistic death to me. That's like just sends a chill down my spine to think about doing something like that and then playing it.
I can understand that too, because there's times even when I'm listening to bands that I like listening to, I'm like, oh, let's just see. All of a sudden I hear some like, I know exactly where that came from. You got that from the Doomsday riff from Architects. I absolutely know where that came from. But then it kind of takes away. I get that, those moments can be such an inspirational moment for certain artists. They can really get behind it. But when it's so closely tied together, and if in your mind it's like, yeah, I kind of think like this is directly feels like this certain band or this certain sound, everyone that's listening to it is going to feel the same way. It's even maybe a little bit harder than you are. But if you're going to put it so much together and put it through your own musical sensibility, your own filter, and just give us something that is influenced by it, but through your lens, through your creativity, through your or like, not say mangling of it, but you're like molding of it to the point where you don't see the stitches in the influences. It's kind of like a big giant ball of clay with all the different colors thrown together and mixed so much to where the colors are now just one. Maybe it's just a brown color, but you don't know where all those influences come in. It's a brand new thing.
Exactly.
And that's where the beauty comes from. And I would never gotten the Oasis, Noah Gallagher style ideas from this, listening to it. But now thinking about it with the bigger choruses, absolutely makes sense.
Yeah. I mean, there's no bigger chorus than "Don't Look Back in Anger." There's just not. And yeah, he's a genius when it comes to melodies and the right mood for a song, and the choruses. It just kind of all comes down to that, and that's, I think, I was talking to our guy that signed us to the deal that we're on now. He, because he sent me a band earlier. He's like, "Oh yeah, I should check out this band. Maybe you guys can play some shows together." And I really liked the band that he sent me. I won't say who.
Okay.
just for, not that I'm about to say anything bad, but and I was listening to it, and the music is really cool. It's definitely more metal than us, sort of more straight ahead metal. And I just started thinking about, how it pertains to us. And I was like, I think, because I'm sort of in that period of self-reflection. The record's been out for 4 days, 5 days, whatever. And we've been, all the like I said, all the reviews so far have been in the heavy world, so I'm kind of interested to see what the non-heavy world has to say. But I was thinking that what sort of sets us apart from heavy bands who are melodic is the approach to the vocal melodies. And it's because a lot of these bands are they're taking their cues from more modern metal bands, and probably the Black Sabbath family tree, which is I mean, Sabbath is in my top 20 favorite bands. I love Sabbath, don't get me wrong, but I, like I said, Elvis Costello, McCartney, Lennon, Harrison, like those are my guys. Van Morrison, despite his recent views on the world, Marvin Gaye, Sam Cooke, like all the R&B and soul and doo-wop stuff that I grew up on, like those are my vocally, even if I'm writing the heaviest riff I've ever written, melodically and vocally, that's what I'm looking for. Because no matter what the chord structure is or the riff is, the way those melodies sort of hit you in the gut and in the right in the chest, that doesn't change, no matter what the music is. So I always joke around that, like, melodically, if I'm going for Elvis Costello or McCartney, that I'm never going to get there, but if that's what I'm trying for, I'm going to get somewhere good. So that's always the approach that I take. And I'm sure there are other heavy bands that do take that approach as well. But I think that coupled with the sort of random influences that we throw in, that, the squeeze and the, whatever, the solo Peter Gabriel, as opposed to the Genesis, the Peter Gabriel Genesis era. And all the sort of random little things that we throw in with the heavier stuff is sort of what sets us apart. And I like to embrace the things that make us stand out, in the pile, so to speak.
I'll say, just after listening to that, I want to go back through this whole entire record with Pillars of Creation, because now knowing this stuff, there's so much more to discover. There's so much more to look at. There's so much more to understand. And especially after listening to this, if you're, I know you're still listening to this point because this conversation's been great, but you're going to want to go into this record now And you're going to want to embrace all these differences, all these different ideas, and really understand where they came from. You're going to find new things about these songs every time you listen to them. You're going to pick up, oh, this may have come from here. This may have come from here. Who knows? But you're going to find so much more in there. And that's the beauty when you have so many influences. You can go back further, find those influences of the influences, mold them together into what you really want, create your sound, and you get something like this. Pillars of creation, baby.
Yeah, exactly. And I like I said, I grew up with a musical dad. So his grandmother, so my great grandmother was a Pentecostal minister, like dirt floor church in Alabama in the early 1900s or whatever. So my dad grew up singing in church. We're not religious at all. I'm a Jewish atheist, but so I heard my dad's mom playing gospel music all through my life. So I love that stuff. Absolutely. And then it's kind of a convoluted story, but my mom's side of the family is Jewish, which is what makes me Jewish. And
Okay.
my uncle, my mom's brother, he was actually born in a displaced persons camp in Germany. My family was all in a concentration camp, unfortunately. We won't go into that. That's kind of a bummer. I'm sure everybody's familiar with what happened during those years. But in his mid-20s, he was a staff engineer for Columbia Records in New York. Like, I think he started in 1969. So if you can imagine the just badass music he was recording, he did so much cool shit. So when I was a kid, he knew I was into music and he exposed me to all kinds of stuff. So he was playing me like Robert Johnson stuff when I was like 7. So I grew up really exposed to a lot of different stuff from both sides of my family. So I was very lucky in that, and I think that had a lot to do with I guess overall I'm kind of a rock purist, but at the same time, like I'll have periods where I'll listen to Robert Johnson for a week solid, and then just Sam Cooke for a week, and Aretha. I mean, Aretha makes me cry. Like it is such a universal language, to be cliched again, but and that's the great thing about being a songwriter and being a musician and being in a band is like you can take all those things and make your own thing with them, and even our drummer, he listens to all kinds of stuff, and he's back there beating the shit out of the drums. So I don't necessarily think he's thinking about Rose in Spanish Harlem when he's doing it, but that's kind of the beauty of like I said, being a musician, and especially in our band, because we kind of have a rule that like nothing is off limits. When we're putting a song together, like I'll bring in the structure of the song, the chords, it's all laid out. Sometimes I'll already have the lyrics and the melody, but I at least have the music to the song done. And I try not to have parts in mind for anything else, just to let the guys kind of have at it. Because like nothing is off limits if anybody wants to try anything. And sometimes it's perfect, and sometimes everybody's like, let's try. Even sometimes with me, I'm like, oh wait, I have a cool idea for this, and I'll play it, and everybody's like, maybe we should try something different there, but that's the fun of it all.
That's the fun of it all. It's all the mixtures that come together to create a great record like this. So Pillars of Creation is out now for you guys to all go listen to. Ryan, I do want to thank you for being on the podcast today. It's been a blast.
Yeah,
one thing I like to end with is giving you a chance to say whatever you want to say. Plug we're in a plug. Promote at the end of the episode. So my friend, floor is yours.
Just please give the record a listen. We're on all the streaming services and all that. Find us on social media. The record's out on CD and vinyl. We have just regular black vinyl and also limited edition color vinyl, which we actually got to watch go be pressed, which was cool. We'll be out on tour playing Birmingham, Alabama on Saturday, June 1st. I don't know when this is going to air. And then we're in Greenville, South Carolina, Atlanta, home in Nashville, Asheville, North Carolina, and Charlotte. And then we're in Sellersville, Pennsylvania for 2 nights, and Red Bank, New Jersey.
Okay. Still a little bit of the run there. And now it's time for me to end this podcast with 3 things. First things first, Pillars of Creation is out now. It's on streaming platforms. You can get it on vinyl, CD, everything. You're also going to follow along with Sound&Shape, because if you don't, I don't know what you're doing. You got to be doing this stuff. So here's what you're going to do. Go to the script for the podcast. It says find Sound&Shape online. Links and labels for everything are going to be there. So you can follow them online, get some merch, pick up a vinyl, pick up a CD, where you can stream it, where you can listen to it, and where you can go see these guys play live, because I suggest you go and do that and get the album as well. So it's all down there for you. Got you covered. Now it's time for number 2. Ryan never gets to the podcast. I enjoy the podcast. I make a promise as a way to say thank you, and I wish to continue supporting in the future. So my promise is this, because right now you're not coming anywhere near me on these shows. So you got to come more to the Midwest at this point in time. When I get to see you perform live for the first time, I will find you. I will come and say hi to you. But the promise is first round's on me.
Sure.
And hold me to it too, because I got to make sure I make good on my promises.
I will. Where are you at? Are you allowed to say that?
Yeah, I'm in Milwaukee, Wisconsin.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I love Milwaukee.
Yeah, and even if you don't make it up here, as long as you make it to Chicago, we're good.
Sweet.
And now it's time for number 3. I can't end this podcast by saying goodbye. Ryan, this was great. I made you a promise I got to keep, and I would love to have you back on again in the future for another great conversation like this. This is not goodbye, my friend. This is, I'll see you later.
Absolutely.
Well, folks, that's my interview with Ryan from Sound&Shape, and now it's time for Kevin's final thought. Well, first off, thank you everyone for bearing with me with my voice being so shot during this episode. Not the best for me, but now let's really dive deep into it. One thing I love what Ryan said was talking about influences, and I was influenced by the Beatles, talked about the Smashing Pumpkins, talked about Oasis and Noah Gallagher, but then talked about going deeper, Sam Cooke, even talking about Robert Johnson. And I was hoping we were going to get to Robert Johnson at some point. When he said it, internally I was like, I can't believe he actually did it, but yes! However, the importance I like about that is it shows a completely different way of creating this fresh sound that is so many people are seeing in rock and metal, and not just sticking with influences that are on the surface, whether it's just, what's coming up and what is there, what you guys are directly influenced by, like we saw in the 2010s, or what we're really seeing now, which I really do like, which is what people are influenced by, but also what they're influenced by outside of these specific genres. What Ryan did was go deeper and deeper and deeper to get different constructions from what these influencers are influenced by and how he could be influenced by them to bring them into his music. It creates such a vast world of differentiation, a vast world of something that we can really sink our teeth into. And if you're looking for new inspiration, go give that a shot. Trust me, might work out for you. When it comes to Ryan and Sound&Shape, though, go straight to the podcast where it says find Sound&Shape online, links, labels for everything, for them on social media, where you can check out the brand new record, Pillars of Creation, where you can buy the record, all that stuff down in the description below. Also, be sure to hit subscribe to the Chord Progression Podcast. We have new episodes every single Tuesday and Thursday, and reaction videos on Friday as well. So please go do that. Enjoy. Hit the like button. Thank you, everybody. Thank you, Ryan. Now, that's what you guys think. We're listening to the Chord Progression Podcast. My name is Kevin, and you guys know how I end everything was with a big, healthy, and hearty. Let's try this. See ya! Yeah.